Let's go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Destination the Show. This is episode 97, Twins Manager Candidates and Fast Tracking MLB Draft Prospects. It's too long of a title. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined as always by Jeremy Nygaard. Jeremy, what's up? Hey, I am a little sad because you just did a lightning fast wardrobe change situation, and you were all dressed up, and I was hoping you would bring that dorky attire onto our stream, but here you are.
I'm sorry. It was a lot of stuff going on, which looked really bad. So it's gone. It's in a pile, and the plain white tee is what we're gonna get. I'm good. I just got home from a extremely long day of work.
Bravo.
I took my shoes off. I think I put my shoes on at about 6:05, and I took the shoes off at about 8:55. So, but it's always Jordans. Every day it's Jordans. That's what I do.
This is some truly old man complaining here. You're time stamping the moment that you put on and took off your shoes. I feel you though.
It's a long day when you wear your shoes for almost 15 hours.
It is. I can't relate, honestly. I work from home, and so I have a variety of indoor shoe options, and so that is one of the benefits of working from home. Days are long, but you know what's making it better is watching the life force be slowly drained out of the Yankees season as we speak. Blue Jays are up 5-1 in the bottom of the 8th. Let's go. We'll see. Dude, I'm excited. I'm excited to jump into all of the things, all things baseball. There's not really Twins news, so we had to make our own. And those, I feel like, usually end up being the best episodes. So we're going to talk about Trey Yesavage. We're going to talk about fast-tracking prospects from the draft to the big leagues. We're going to talk about Twins manager search. We're going to talk about Cam Flukey. And then we'll hit some questions and get out of here. But let's do the housekeeping first. You can support the show by liking and subscribing on your preferred podcast platform of choice. You can find all of our ramblings on YouTube. Handle there is at Destination the Show. If you want to send us a question, which a gazillion people sent us questions this week, thank you so much. You can do so on Twitter at DTS_pod1. On Blue Sky, the handle is at Destination the Show, or send us an email, destinationtheshow@gmail.com. Jeremy, let's jump in. Did you perchance see, and I'm going to guess because I know what your work life has been like recently, I'm going to guess you haven't watched a ton of playoff baseball wire to wire. Did you get a chance to see Trey Yesavage absolutely dominate the Yankees at the Rogers Center?
I saw some clips on Twitter of Trey Yesavage doing his thing. Not only have I not been able to watch playoff baseball wire to wire, I haven't been able to watch playoff baseball, period.
Yeah.
So I did have the game cast going for about half an inning of the Brewers in between meetings tonight. But I did see Aaron Judge's bomb. But yeah, Trey Yesavage, he's nasty, and it's like when you see one guy come up and do what Paul Skeens did, that's cool, right? Then you see the next year Mizorowski do the same thing.
Yep.
And now we've seen Trey Yesavage come up. Like, at what point does this become this is the new normal of seeing guys do freaky things right after making their major league debut?
It's almost like I told you to say that to segue us into something, but I didn't. You came up with that of your own volition. I mean, I agree 100%. The reason I want to touch on Yesavage quickly before we move on to your general question is Darren Wolfson tweeted out something that I think is worthy of Twins fan public consumption this week, which basically alluded to, Jeremy. Trey Yesavage was top of the pile for your Minnesota Twins at pick 21 had he gotten there. As it turns out, he was selected by the Blue Jays at 20th overall. As you mentioned, struck out, I think, 11 Yankees in 5 innings of work in a playoff game, which was like his third big league start. Now the Twins have got to feel pretty good about their first round pick because they took Kalen Culpepper, who mashed pretty much his entire debut season all the way up to AA. Probably would have made it to AAA had he not slowed down, slightly at the end of the year and then got hurt at the very, very end of the season. When you hear something like that, does it give you confidence or does it bum you out that your team was in line to take a player who's doing really well? Like, do you get any like FOMO from that? Do you not care? How does it make you
feel? It doesn't really give me confidence. I think as we watch the draft unfold, and if someone wants to go through and rewatch that, I think we probably felt like that was bound to happen if he was still available, right? I mean, he was not expected to be available at 21. I think when he got to like 16, we were like, wait, this is something.
Yeah.
And then we'd say, is this something? And then we waited 4 more picks and then he got drafted. So it wasn't at all surprising. I think that was kind of how you and I felt anyway. And we've all been a part of watching drafts and taking part in fantasy drafts and seeing the guy that we were going to take get sniped, right? And that doesn't really do any good to, bemoan the fact, or it's just that's how drafts work. And so he's a good pitcher. I think we recognize that he was a good pitcher. The Twins recognized he was a good pitcher. The Blue Jays recognized he was a good pitcher, and it just so happened that the Blue Jays got to pick 1 pick before the Twins, and that's how it worked out. So it's super cool. I always think it's cool when guys come up and make their debuts or make an impactful start early in their career. I mean, it's similar to, but not completely similar to like the Alex Kirilloff making his major league debut in the playoffs, right? Those are cool stories. And for Trey Yesavage to do it against the Yankees just makes it that much sweeter.
Yeah. It was definitely awesome to watch. A couple of other Trey Yesavage nuggets that I think are interesting and relevant. He did fall a little. I look back at the board and he was, I want to say, like 11th by consensus in his draft year. So he did fall a bit. And he did have an injury at the end of that season. I think he had a collapsed lung. But I got into an interesting conversation with some folks on the Twins Daily Slack this week, just around like falling due to injury doesn't make a lot of sense to me unless it's something serious, like labrums, UCLs, elbows, things like collapsed lungs should be just non-considerations in my opinion, because Yesavage has like outlier release traits. Like he, I think, is going to be tied with or close to, like Justin Verlander and Yesavage have the most like upright over the top release in baseball, like the highest release Y, if you will. The only guy who could get close to them eventually is Slenderman himself, Jason Reitz.
There we go.
But yeah, just always find it interesting to compare and contrast like potential options. Like I'll always do the same thing with Max Clark and Walker Jenkins, just because they were next to each other in the draft, widely speculated as like the 2 premier prep guys in that draft, and fun to compare. So you asked a question, Jeremy, about like, is this the new normal? Let me throw some data your way for you to react to. So this is a piece that I recommend people check out from Baseball America in the past week by Jacob Rudner, who primarily writes about college baseball. Here is the number of MLB debuts within 2 seasons of draft year. So I'm going to give you some numbers by year. It's a number of players who made their MLB debut within 2 years of being drafted. 2019, 9. 2020, 15. 2021, 4. Just 4 players. 2022, 7. 2023, 29. 2024, 28, and 2025, 27. So in the past 3 years, we have seen a massive uptick in the number of players that are flying through the minors. And you could name 10 instantaneously, Kurtz, Caglione, whoever from the most recent draft. And I found this interesting. Yesavage is, of course, a great example. And I think we know why. Like, Well, I guess, do we know why? You've always talked about the shrinking of minor league rosters overall as part of that. Any other things you want to kind of speculate on it as to like why guys are moving so much faster and why we're seeing more and more of this?
Well, I think there's a number of reasons, but I do want to ask, do you have that broke down by pitcher versus hitter?
Nope. Do not.
Okay,
Sadly.
so a couple theories. One is what I've shared with having, it's less promotions, right? So if you look at the numbers when there was one more league, and the signing date was different and the draft was different, like if you looked at the guys that made it to AAA, right, is that comparable? But I do think that has something to do with it. I think another thing that is probably the most significant reason is the increase in popularity of social media, right? Like a guy can hit a home run 3 minutes ago and we can all see it right now. And that, like when Ben Revere was drafted, now this goes back 20 years. When Ben Revere was drafted, ESPN didn't even have like highlights of him. They didn't have a picture of him, right?
Yep.
There just wasn't, like, there was nobody that was known. And now, like, it used to be a thing where scouts talked about guys being famous, right?
Yep.
And now it's not the same. Like, guys are guys that are famous now are everybody, and the guys that scouts call famous are the ones that like have this enormous following, even before they've gotten drafted. So I think that's part of it. I also think that baseball's done some things with PPI that has helped. Players are agreeing to these super team friendly long deals that are good for teams to get these guys up. And for pitchers, at least anyway, I think that as teams have seen how many, trying to handle guys with kid gloves, like Dylan Bundy, I think is the best example of this. Dylan Bundy was drafted by the Orioles, and he would pitch like 3 innings every week as a young, professional, as they tried to handle him in such a way that he was never going to get hurt. And then he got hurt. And then they were out without him for a couple of years. And now it's like, the guy's arm's probably going to blow up. So let's just use him as much as we can in the biggest, situation possible that he's ready for. And then if the arm blows up, we sign him, we could sign him to a whatever year deal, and use the bullets early. So I think there's just a combination of a lot of things, not to mention the fact that guys are bigger and faster and stronger at a younger age, right? You can turn on like, I think college football, like Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams, they come out of high school and it's like, oh, these guys are ready for the NFL. It doesn't happen. You turn on the NBA and it's Victor Wembanyama and you're like, that guy's 7'5" and he's 18 years old. Like, these guys, it happened in the past, right? It's happened before. You have the LeBron James of the world, Mike Williams, Maurice Clarett. Like, it happened, but it didn't happen like it's happening in numbers now. And it's just because things become more competitive at a younger age, and guys are just better than they used to be. So I think it's kind of the perfect storm of all of that. I think when we talk about the prime in baseball being like 25, 26, 27, right? I would guess that 10 years from now, we're going to talk about that prime being
interesting
earlier, right? Whether that's 23, 24, 25, or just a longer prime, because we've seen older guys that they hang on, but also start to get phased out of the game. Like, 30, they're old, right? And before it was like major league debut at 26 and then play until they're 35. And it's just kind of a pendulum shift, I think. And it'll be interesting to see how things progress.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing to your bigger, stronger, faster guys that I think is super relevant and should be called out. Better college level player development. Like, if you follow college baseball, and the season will come around soon enough, you see more and more programs have their own analytics departments. They're making data more available to guys. I think obviously the most famous example is like the Wake Forest pitching lab. You didn't get, now Paul Skeens is maybe not a good example because he's like a generational type arm, but you didn't even get like Rhett Lauder type arms in college like 10, 15 years ago. You were looking at guys who were throwing 88, 90, and now you're looking at guys that are like sitting 95. And just like some of the arms that we've talked about in recent draft cycles, Lauder, Paul Skeens, Chase Burns, Hagen Smith. I mean, these are just unbelievably developed athletes earlier. So I definitely think that factors into, I guess, my last question, Jeremy, before we move on and talk about the Twins manager search a little bit. And I guess this is coming from a Twins specific lens because they've always had this, whether fair or not, association with being tied to college guys more. And I think the reality in baseball now for folks who follow the draft is there's just less and less prep players being selected, period. That's not like a Twins thing. That's just in general, it is skewing heavily towards college guys. Do you think this massive uptick in guys reaching the big leagues faster out of college should impact the way that teams draft? And if so, how?
I think it kind of does. And it kind of goes back to your point. Like you talked about the Wake pitching factory. What's the difference there, right? It's the access to data.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Would you suggest that it's the access to data and the usability of data?
Yeah, I think it's like a couple of things, like access for sure, but also programs' ability to turnkey that in a way that players can consume it and want to consume it, and getting that buy-in from players on the front end as to say like, oh, I'm seeking out Jeremy. He's a guy I want on my program because he is interested in development and how he can kind of get the most out of his talent. So I think those two things play in as well.
Right. So then I think what you can do is if you have this data, if you have access to this data, is now you can make comparisons. Like, for example, Aaron Hicks is drafted in a team to a team that has Torrey Hunter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe outfield's not the best example, but how does Aaron Hicks at 18 compare to Torrey Hunter at, or whatever he was, 27 or 28? Now you can draft a guy and you can say, this is exactly how Connor Prelip compares to this guy in the major league rotation, right? And so it's raw numbers, but it's like, wait a second, if he's got a faster fastball, if he's got more break on his breaking ball, if his RP, like all of these things, like why are we not, like what's making him someone that we are going to slowly progress, right? Is that logical?
100%. Yep.
And so I think that goes into back to your question, like, yes, that impacts drafting, because if you have a guy and you're like, wait a second, he's exactly what we have in this guy who's 25 years old and is still getting better, we can put them on the same developmental plan. And it's not just eyeballs, right? It's the data that suggests that we can do this or has done this or will do this. And it's going to impact not just drafting, but how you try to develop and how you coach these guys and how you use these guys. And that lends itself to this other question, right? Where are players now not humans and they're just numbers and all of that? Like that's a thing too. But that's the age that we are in, and it's going to be that way, forever. And you can then have, and I'm sure teams are doing this. You have then data, and you plug it into AI machines, which I wish Theo was here, because Theo apparently hates AI. But you can plug it into these machines that do that work for you.
Yep.
And is that a waste of energy? Is that a waste of? Well, yeah. I mean, you can argue whatever you want, but the reality is it's something that makes a job that you're trying to do quicker. And that's a huge win for everybody. The human element of error is gone. I mean, I've used ChatGPT literally a ton this week, and it's stuff I could have done to pencil and paper. It would have taken me all week. Instead, I plug it in there and boom, results, right? And so I just think that that's kind of the way of the world, and it's not slowly going that way. It's a freight train going that way.
I look forward to reading like Wisconsin area man fired after using AI to forge important educational documents in my local newspaper this week about you. That'll be great.
Okay, but aside, what important educational documents?
I just wanted to give you a hard time about something. It's not been enough insults. We're like 20 minutes in, and I've lost my edge in the past 2 weeks. You know, last week I couldn't speak, and this week I haven't given you enough jabs.
Yeah, I was gonna say you hate me this week. You must have a fever.
Let's move on and talk a little bit about the Twins manager search. I realize I'm like streaming off Darren Wolfson's tweet so much this week, but he put out another good one with some general updates and information about the manager search. And so he kind of listed out some subcategories, and we're going to weave some listener questions in here. He said the Twins have reached out to one former MLB manager, still filling that out. They're filling out at least one college coach, and they're looking at the staffs of the Royals and Guardians. So with that in mind, I put together my best guess list from those clues. My former MLB managers came up with 2. Derek Shelton or Brandon Hyde, formerly of the Orioles.
Yep.
College coaches we'll come back to because someone asked a question about it. And then for the Royals and the Guardians, bench coaches, respectively. Paul Hoover for the Royals and Craig Albernaz of the Guardians. So let's segue into a question then. I want to get your take on something here, Jeremy. So Raphael asks, with reports the Twins are looking at college managers, which outside of Tony Vitello would interest you? And so just background for people who don't follow college baseball. Tony Vitello, head coach of Tennessee, won a national championship the year before last. Very like big personality. I wouldn't call him outspoken. He just kind of goes to bat for his guys. But like very widely acclaimed kind of culture, I think, around that program and like the standards within it. I don't necessarily think that he would be interested or necessarily would be a good fit. And so maybe that's why Raphael excluded him from the question. A couple of names came up for me just to throw some out there. Mitch Canham is the head coach at Oregon State. Oregon State, why does that make sense? Produced a lot of big leaguers in that program, very analytics and data heavy in how they kind of operate. And if you're going for a college coach, you're going to go, I think, for someone relatively young who you can kind of bring up in the role over a number of years. And then Kevin Schnall was another one who came up, Coastal Carolina head coach who made it all the way to the College World Series. I think that's more of a like culture guy / he has a proven track record of getting more out of his guys than like the sum of their parts. I know that sounds like horribly like cliche, but you're not expecting Coastal Carolina to make it all the way to the National Championship Series necessarily. So those are just a couple of fun names. Wyatt asked Jeremy, and I'm going to throw this question to you. Who is your ideal manager and who's your guess? Anyone of the list you heard or other candidates who we haven't talked about? And if you don't want to name specific names, like what are you looking for in a manager?
So when you said Kevin Schnall, I was like, I like that. That would be fun.
Okay.
He's from what I've seen of him, he's kind of the fiery, emotional, like I will fall on this sword for my team type guy. And I think a lot of college coaches are.
For sure.
But when you said that name, there was just some stuff that happened later in the year that kind of resonated with. I think he would be a good leader of men. He's 48. So another name that while you're talking, I'm just kind of Googling, and maybe not the best, but I know that the Twins have always had a good relationship with Alabama. Alabama's head coach Rob Vaughn came from the Big Ten, even though it was Maryland.
Yeah.
Both of those guys, I believe, were catchers in their playing career, which I think is a draw. You mentioned Derek Shelton. I know Derek Shelton was really well liked when he was the bench coach before going to Pittsburgh. That one makes sense to me. But I think, and I said this before, and I don't know if it was on here talking to people, like Pat Murphy's success going from the college ranks to Milwaukee kind of opened this bridge to this being an option. And I think the NIL and recruiting, I could see more people making this jump. So the guy that the Tennessee guy is the one that everybody talks about, but there's so many college coaches that I think if you find the right guy, and obviously these are the guys that the scouts and the cross checkers and they've worked so closely with, right? And so if you've
Yankees
been
are out,
I'm hurt. I'm hurt. If you've been scouting talent coast to coast, like you recognize the coaches that are using the right verbiage when talking about players, right? So I think there's probably a bigger search going on out there. And I would love, I think I would love if they hired a guy that I'm like, never heard of him.
Yeah.
Right? I think that would be fun.
I'm definitely with that. And I, also, it's not like the Twins are averse to hiring college coaches. They were actually on the forefront of that with Wes Johnson, who is now back as the head coach of Georgia. In fact, I want to say, and someone will correct us if we're wrong, that was the first example of a pitching coach getting hired straight to a major league role from the college ranks. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was the first example.
I believe that is correct. Okay. When this whole college to the pros things came up, I was like, Wes Johnson?
Oh wait, dude. He's way too deep in the transfer portal with Georgia.
He left the Twins high and dry, right? Like I'm guessing he burned some bridges, but I mean he left for did he leave for LSU?
Georgia.
No.
Then LSU. Yeah.
He left for Mississippi State and then went to Arkansas, and now he's at Georgia. Like, dude bounces.
Yeah.
And he's been all over the SEC. So, I mean, if it's a college coach, a young, energetic guy that can do what Pat Murphy did to the Brewers and overachieve, I think we would be a fan of that.
Yeah, 100%. Wait, speaking of which, last coach thing, P. Mackey was at Duke, right, too. So there's another good example of a college coach or a major league coach come via the college ranks from the Twins. So congrats to the Blue Jays for making the ALCS. Good job.
So they did that with a former
with David Hopkins.
Who was the Mets Hafner? Did he just get fired?
He did. He did.
And he was the pitching coach?
He was.
So yeah, I guess we'll see how this all plays out. But the Twins have had success. I think they know they know a thing or two about where to find the talent. And now it's just working. What's going to come down to is Derek Falvey's vision being a good one.
Yep.
Yeah. Right, with the limited payroll that he's going to have forced upon him and can't really do anything about because ownership is the worst in the world.
Don't know if I'm ready for that conversation today. But we have a Coastal Carolina adjacent prospect to touch on. I said last week, Jeremy, one vote might win this. in digging into another draft prospect, I really want to just give folks a little bit of a flavor of some of the guys who are interesting, and we're certainly not going in any kind of order here. But we said we put it out there for people. Do you want to hear about Liam Peterson or Cam Flukey? Cam Flukey was the choice, and it got more than one vote. So look at us. So I just want to touch on Cam Flukey and tie this to a question, and then get your kind of take based on what you hear about like how you feel about potentially taking. I'm going to plant the seed now, Jeremy. Like how you potentially feel about taking a pitcher with the top 3 pick under slot in order to load up for other things later in the draft. We'll come back to that in a minute. So Wyatt asks, who are potential Tyler Bremner guys, who he is defining as a guy ranked 10 to 15 who could go higher and get underslotted, so you could pay another guy higher later in the draft. So just quick, want to run through some Cam Flukey numbers. One of the premier college arms in this class, 6'6", 205, threw 101.2 innings last year for Coastal Carolina. That's about as many as you can throw in college. These are the things I think, Jeremy, that are going to impress you. 3.18 ERA, okay, good. 2.68 FIB. In 101.2 innings, he struck out 118, and he walked only 24. Here's why Cam Flukey, I think, is actually potentially a good fit for the Twins. The stuff is there now. Fastball's up to 98. It's 19 inches of induced vertical break. He threw 74% strikes on his fastball in 2025. That is like Zebby Matthews plus 2, 3, 4 percentage points. And I'm not talking about Major League Zebby. I'm talking about AA Zebby when he didn't walk a guy barely ever. There's enough of an arsenal there that I think is really interesting. Best secondary is a curveball, had a 50% whiff rate in college last year. Also has a slider and a splitter. Just great spin traits in general. And so that combo of like, I'm a 6'6" dude with room to potentially add some more weight. I'm already up to 98. I have 3 more pitches and I'm throwing strikes over 70% is a rare combination. And maybe someone who's like faded a smidge in the public sector just because he's at a smaller school. So let me throw it to you, Jeremy. Like, let's say the Twins have a top 3 pick, but it's not number 1, right? So Rock is off the board. Let's just say they're picking 3rd. Okay. How would you feel about the hypothetical of taking like a potentially high octane arm who the bet that you're making is he's going to be like a 1 or a 2, a playoff type guy, saving money on that, and then repackaging that money later with your comp B or your second rounder or whatever?
Yeah, I'd be all for that. It's just a matter of these pitchers. They gotta stay healthy, right? If Flukey repeats his sophomore year where he, like you mentioned, throws over 100 innings, strikes out over 10 per 9, walk rate only 2 per 9, which was half of what it was as a freshman, right?
That's a piece too.
As long as he doesn't regress, but there are other guys. The Florida kid is a stud.
Yeah, Peterson. Yeah,
you know, there's certainly other guys, but and I said it last week. I think we talked about it. Like the ability to draft or the ability to add a frontline starter, an elite starting pitcher, is not. It's not something the Twins are going to do during free agency, right? It's something that they're going to have to either trade for and give up a really good player on a team and get a Pablo Lopez type and then pay him.
Yep.
Or make a really good trade and get the Joe Ryan type. But I don't think we're talking about Joe Ryan as an ace, right?
Agreed.
We're talking about a low level 1, high level 2 when he's right, but he you know, being durable. I think we talk about Pablo being a 1, but I don't know necessarily that we talk about Pablo being an ace, right? And I guess it's, you know, how do you want to describe those things? Because I would say an ace is like a 1 on any team, and Pablo is not that. So if you have the ability, going back to your question, if you have the ability to add a guy that, like, if things turn out right, he's going to be an ace. You do it, and that's you're not going to get Paul Skeens in every draft, but if you have the chance to get a guy that's 80% of Paul Skeens, that changes it maybe doesn't change the trajectory of the regular season, but it changes the trajectory of the postseason. And once you get to the playoffs, all bets are off unless you have what the Dodgers have. And the Twins are only going to get that by drafting it. So I'm all for it, especially if you can push some money down and draft some preps and take some shots. I like I said, I think Rock is the guy. But if you settle on a pitcher that you believe can be a guy that can take a ball in the wild card round and put you up 1-0, that's a huge deal.
Love it. Okay, so we'll keep this feature going, Jeremy. Just like 5 minutes on a guy every episode, and we'll probably increase that to 2 guys and 5 guys eventually when draft season kicks off. So here's the choices for this coming week, and I suppose we should touch on Liam Peterson because we did bring him up as an option. So maybe we'll make it 2 per week. But we'll touch on Liam Peterson because he was the loser of today's bracket. I think we'll stick with college for the time being. And we'll give 2 of the more famous, college hitters at the top of the 2026 class. So who do you guys want to hear about next week? Your choices are Drew Burress, who's a undersized outfielder from Georgia Tech, who's just absolutely electric. Or do you want to hear about Justin LeBron, who is a shortstop at the University of Alabama, who had one of the most impressive freshman seasons in recent memory? Took a third of a step back last year, but was still really impressive. So Drew Burress or Justin LeBron, those are the choices for next week, and we'll come back to Liam Peterson quick here too. Who's your vote for, Jeremy? Drew Burress or Liam or Justin LeBron?
LeBron would be my vote, but my vote doesn't matter.
Okay. News and notes. Just round up a couple of things here. Hendry Mendez, home run in his first plate appearance in the AFL, is the one Twin off to a really hot start. I saw Billy Amick was 0 for 4 with 4 Ks in his first game.
Whitaker was.
What was he? I didn't see his line.
I think he was 0 for 4 with 3 Ks.
Okay. Okay, we'll give him
some exactly time. What I expected out of both of those dudes.
We'll give him some time to bet in. Other news and notes. This time last week, I had done 100 draft lottery sims. We're up to 200 now. So here are your updated numbers for you to speculate on. The Twins have not landed in 8th again since last week. So 1.5% of the time they're in 8th, 8.5% in 7th, 10% in 6th, 11% in 5th, 11.5% in 4th, and then the top 3 pick, which is what we've been talking about the most, 20% of the time in 3rd, 19% in 2nd, and 18.5% in 1st. That is good for a 57.5% chance of a top 3 pick through 200 sims. That's what I got.
I saw the numbers for 2 and 3 went down, right? And the numbers for 7 went up.
That they did. That they did. All right, let's finish up with some questions, Jeremy, and then we'll get out of here. So Wyatt sent like 5 questions this week. Thanks, Wyatt. He said, "Do you expect the Oregon pitcher to start?" I assume that he means Jason Reitz. He was like the height intrigues. 6'11", Jason Reitz. Do you expect the Twins to give him a chance to start? I think he was their 4th round pick in 2025.
I mean, I would operate under the assumption that he's going to get every opportunity to remain a starter. I can't imagine that they would draft someone like that high and then say, "Oh, you're a bullpen arm." Give him a chance to develop. He's going to kind of be on the long path because he's got to put on about 200 pounds.
So here's my question about that. Can he put on weight?
Yes. I don't know how much it is, though.
because I think about Festa as like a similar build, right? And he's like 7 inches taller than David Festa, which is wild. But David Festa is like 6'5", and I feel like he has put on a little bit of weight since he was drafted, but he's still so slender. Slim Reaper nickname. I really wonder about Jason Reed's capacity to like. He's just so tall. He's so stretched out. I don't know how you add weight to that frame in a meaningful way.
Well, it might not appear like he could put on 20 pounds and I don't think anybody would notice. Right now he turns sideways and he vanishes. So I think
Flat Stanley. Did you have that book? Do you guys have that book here? Flat Stanley?
Dude, to have it here, like
here in the United States. I'm not from here.
Of course, Flat Stanley is in the United States. What kind of question is that? Like it's a staple of all elementary school like traveling projects. You send Flat Stanley out, and for goodness sakes. But yes, that's an apt nickname. But yeah, you can put weight on him. He's never gonna look like Bailey Ober. But you could put 30 pounds on him to just because he weighs like 117 pounds right now. And so, yes, but yeah, start him. You got to build him up, and I think there's certainly a chance. There's just the mechanics on someone so long is something that is always going to be a question.
And I thought like he's going to be so interesting to watch. I think he's one of the guys I'm most excited to see. All of those pitching guys, Matt Barr, Riley Quick, all those dudes, I'm super excited to see. But Reed's is just like fascinating because he's just a physical outlier. There's no other way to describe him. I'd love to get him on the podcast, dude. That would be so great. But he will have the highest release of any pitcher in baseball when he debuts with the Twins, I believe, even higher than Verlander and Yesavage and all those guys. And he's not throwing like Bailey Ober when he was drafted was throwing like 88, I want to say. Reed's is throwing 94 and 95 with his fastball. Right. There's control stuff like you mentioned, but the stuff is there.
It's a different time than it was.
Sure is. Okay, Jeff says, what are the logistics of around floating a player during the draft? I feel like we get this question a lot. Thanks, Jeff. Are they telling a player they'll draft? Is a team telling a player they'll draft him later and he's agreeing to a specific bonus? Are the player's agents telling other teams he won't sign? I do feel like we have maybe like slightly discrepant views on this, but I think both, right? Like, what's your take on this, Jeremy?
Yeah, it's both of those things. So the baseball draft is weird, and so it's basically like a used car lot or a new car lot where the agents got the sticker on the vehicle, and when you get someone that agrees to pay that price, then you try to find someone that'll pay more. And if no one will pay that price, then it's slowly like the stock market, right? It's up and it's down. So, you know, if a team works out a deal, it starts at the top. So, you know, if you're drafting first, you're talking to 4 or 5 different agents about 4 or 5 or maybe more different players, trying to get the lowest deal. And then behind that, you're doing the same thing. And so I don't know that it's like specific dollar, you know, like 9.14 million or 8.37 million. It's like, this is what it's going to take. And then once you know as a team what you're going to have, like you call a different agent and you're like, hey, you know, we might have about 4 million for your guy. Well, how does that sound? It's like, well, yeah, we will take 4 million if we can get them down to wherever. But then when other teams are calling, you're the agent saying it's going to cost 4 million. And I don't think there's a lot of players now that are saying, we're just not signable, because everybody's signable for the right amount. You know, I think Josh Bell was probably one of the better examples of a guy that said definitely not signing because his mom was like a college professor and he really wanted to go, but then still the money came out and he signed. But that's kind of how that works. Was it the Orioles last year? Who had all the money? Was it the Orioles?
Orioles had all the money.
And it's like, so as guys were falling, and it wasn't even that they got as much as we were thinking. But that's kind of the deal. Like the order of the draft picks aren't happening in the order in which these deals are agreed upon. If you watch the NBA draft, right? If you listen to Tim Connolly, because the Timberwolves had the first pick in the second round, it was going to be this pick that was worth a bunch. He comes out and he's like, well, it's kind of disappointing because the agents got themselves involved and guys were not available when we were on the board. And so then they as a result moved back, which you can't in baseball, but it's basically finding that guy and being like, okay, well, we're not going to get these guys because of their price, so now we're going to go lower with this guy. So yeah, I mean, it's both of those things. It's a lot of logistics. It's a lot of conversations. And then as you get later in the draft, it becomes something different, right? I think, most famously, I tell the story about when Mike Trout was drafted by the Angels, and that it was basically a college recruiting trip. You sit in the living room and you say, hey, where do you think you're going to get drafted? Would you sign there? What's the bottom number going to be? And Mike Trout told the Twin Scout point blank, like, probably go in the fourth round. And he's like, are you signable in the fourth round? And his dad was like, yep. And then he goes to the first round and becomes, one of the better players to play baseball. So it obviously depends on where you're projected to go. High school guys have the NIL thing. That's new, right? Where it's like, man, I could pass on that money now and get that money 3 more times and then get that money again on the draft. So the NIL certainly adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
Yeah. Only thing I would add there, I guess, is like the amount to which agents are up in people's business, I think is maybe undersold to people who only follow the draft casually. Like every time I will put a board out, even though it's just a consensus of other people's rankings, agents or people involved with a particular player will reach out and ask, like, why isn't this person higher? Or you should correct this, etc. Which, like, of course, if there's a mistake, gotta fix it. But there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to work on shaping kind of public perception of their guys. And that's part of their job, but it extends pretty far. And so when it comes down to the nitty gritty of negotiating, I think like that's a whole politicking process that's going on for weeks and months ahead of draft day.
Sure is.
Okay, Tom Froming, friend of the podcast. What appears to be the strength of this upcoming draft class? How does it stack up against recent years? Well, we're early, obviously, and so I don't know that I would comment too much on the prep group. I think if we're going back, let's go back to 2023, because that was the draft of the Big Five, and that draft is shaping up to be really good. 2023 was just an outstanding class. 2024, everyone said, oh, we're down on 2024 because we were comparing it to 2023. And then you have guys like Nick Kurtz who put up some of the best rookie numbers ever coming out of 2024. I think last year there was a really good group of prep infielders and a really unexciting group of college hitters at the top. I think the biggest difference from last year to this year is more exceptionally well-rounded elite college hitting profiles. A lot of the college guys last year and a lot of the hitting profiles in general, there were questions or concerns about the hit tool, swing and miss, strikeouts, etc. There's a lot of guys who have like good defense, good hit tools, good power, and just it's a more well-rounded cluster of college guys, especially at the top. I think left-handed pitching, both in college and prep, is going to turn out to be outstanding in this draft class, which always excites me because we are lefty curious on this podcast, I think. Prep class I'd want to wait on, but I would probably say it's got a chance to be the best since 23. And I would also just kind of prognosticate and say there's going to be a good inflection point where we can talk about the strengths of the class, and it's right before the college season starts. As soon as the college season starts, everyone gets more and more enthusiastic, just on a gradually rolling basis all the way up until the draft. And so by the time we get to next June, everyone's going to be saying this draft class is incredible. The point at which to make this assessment, I think, is like February, March, and we can have a really solid, better conversation about that. But I think college hitting, better, left-handed pitching, exciting, better hit tools, which is important. I think that's it. I think that's all we got, dude.
Good with that.
Next week, just a preview for folks, because someone asked this question and I kind of said, like, we're not going to answer that because we're going to do a whole episode. We're going to review the debut of every Twins 2025 draftee and talk through how did they do, what did they look like, strengths, weaknesses, who are we most excited to see of the guys who didn't debut. So we'll dig into all that. We'll talk about Justin LeBron or Drew Burress. I'm sure we'll have some other news and notes and stuff from the AFL. But thank you guys for checking out the show. We appreciate it. We will be back in about a week with episode 98. Until then, enjoy the Yankees being out.